Welcome. My name is Shannon Bryant. I'm the Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor for the state of Nevada. This is part of the TSRP training video series intended for Nevada law enforcement conducting DUI traffic stops. These short training videos are intended to refresh training for in-service officers who have already completed their Category 1 training. This brief training concerns the so-called 2-hour rule for DUI evidentiary testing in Nevada and is designed to help law enforcement officers understand the law when it comes to collecting breath or blood evidence in their DUI investigations. With that, let's jump in. As everyone should already know, Nevada's DUI statute is found in NRS 484C.110. Subsection 1C of this statute provides that a person is conclusively under the influence of alcohol or impaired per se if he or she is found by measurement within 2 hours after driving or being in actual physical control of a vehicle to have a concentration of alcohol of 0.08 or more in his or her blood or breath. This 2-hour provision, also sometimes called the 2-hour rule, is where we will focus our attention in this training video. Right off the bat, the first thing to understand here is that this 2-hour rule only applies to DUI cases where alcohol impairment is the only basis for the charge. We know this because it is found in subsection 1 of 484C.110, which only pertains to DUIs predicated on alcohol impairment. The 2-hour requirement is not found in any other subsection of 484C.110. Notably, subsections 2 and 3 address drug and alcohol combinations and drug per se impairment, respectively. Thus, to re-emphasize this point, the 2-hour time requirement to collect blood or breath evidence only applies to alcohol-only DUIs. An important note here for law enforcement: if you think your suspect is also under the influence of drugs in addition to alcohol, but that the alcohol concentration is 0.08 or more, consider the 2-hour rule in effect for your case. In such cases where drugs are playing a role in the impairment, even a secondary role, you should not offer the choice of a breath test and should collect blood evidence only. So when should you start the clock to determine that 2-hour period? Fortunately, the statute gives us the answer. NRS 484C.110 sub 1 sub c specifically states within 2 hours of driving or being in actual physical control. Therefore, the clock starts from the last moment that you know the driver was driving or in actual physical control of the vehicle. For cases where you did not see the suspect driving, such as a crash case, the time period does not start from the time you get the call from the dispatcher or the time that you arrived on scene. The time period does also not start when the suspected driver is located after a crash if the vehicle is not capable of being driven. So that covers when to start the clock to measure the 2 hours. Now we need to know when to stop the clock. Your 2-hour time period ends when the blood evidence is drawn or the second of the 2 breath samples is collected. That time will be recorded automatically by the intoxilyzer instrument or manually by the phlebotomist on the phlebotomist's declaration. If the difference between your start and stop times is even 1 second more than the 120 minutes permitted under the 2-hour rule, the results of your evidentiary test will not be admissible in court at trial. Thus, it is critical that you as the law enforcement officer watch that clock, and if you're running up close to that 2-hour mark, you should be requesting a blood seizure warrant for a series blood draw. Using a series blood draw will permit the toxicologist to give a prosecutor the retrograde extrapolation analysis to determine the BAC at the time of driving or actual physical control, even when the blood is collected beyond that 2-hour mark. The toxicologist will not be able to do this, however, if you did not get a series blood draw. Here's a little pro tip for you. Do not wait until 5 or 10 minutes before the time expires to make the decision for whether to apply for a series blood draw. Should the phlebotomist have difficulty obtaining a usable vein, or your suspect suddenly becomes combative and you need more officers to assist with reasonable force to restrain him or her, you will find yourself beyond that 2-hour mark without the authority to obtain a series draw. Think ahead and build in a buffer zone so you do not run into that problem. To recap, the 2-hour rule comes directly from Nevada's DUI statute, NRS 484C.110 sub 1 sub C. It only applies to DUI cases where alcohol is suspected to be the sole cause of the impairment, or in combination drug-alcohol cases where you suspect the suspect's BAC is at or over a .08. The reason for this is that the blood or breath evidence to show the BAC will not be admissible in trial if you exceed this 2-hour time period between the time of driving or actual physical control and the time that you collected the blood or breath evidence. That clock starts at the last moment that you can prove the suspect was driving or in actual physical control of the vehicle. The clock stops when the blood is drawn or when the second of the 2 breath samples is collected. Remember, if you're getting close to that 2-hour mark, don't hope that it will all turn out okay. Hope is not a strategy. Be prepared and apply for a blood seizure warrant for a series draw. This concludes this training video. I'm Shannon Bryant, your Nevada Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor. On behalf of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Nevada's Office of Traffic Safety, and the Washoe County District Attorney's Office, thank you for all you do and for keeping Nevada's roadways safe.